BC Conservative leader John Rustad also pledged to bring back plastic straws if he's elected leader, while NDP leader David Eby repeatedly called out Rustad for questioning climate change. In the meantime, BC Green leader Sonia Furstenau tried to frame her party as the only one with a serious climate plan. Well, at least one listener says there wasn't enough substantive debate on climate issues. David Suzuki is the former host of the CBC's The Nature of Things, and he joins us this morning. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning.
You called us last night to say that the climate change discussion is missing some major points. You referenced climate change scientist Johan Rockström's address to the United Nations last week. Tell us more about that.
Well, Rockström has been saying for a number of years that, like any other animal, humans live within boundaries set by the natural world. If you exceed the boundaries, the limits, that is, you add too much carbon to the atmosphere, you foul up your fresh water, you change the pH of the oceans, you interfere with the nitrogen cycle. These are things we as animals have to live within. And if you exceed these boundaries, changing the pH too much, adding too much carbon, then we create a world in which it's very, very unlikely that we will avoid chaos and maybe even extinction. Well, that's if you pass one of 9 boundaries he's defined. We humans have already passed 6 of the 9 boundaries and are about to pass through the 7th limit. So we are in now what he calls the danger zone, just before we reach a tipping point where you can't go back and all hell breaks loose. And he claims, I'm shocked that his claim has a possibility of being true, that we have 5 years to reverse the trajectory we're on and get back to the safe level. Climate change is only one of those 9 boundaries. We are a species that is absolutely out of control. We're like an invasive species coming into a new area and really undermining the very things that keep us alive. Climate is the focus right now. And if any province should be at the forefront of dealing with climate change, it should be British Columbia. You know, it's not normal to have the kind of fires that we have every year now. We're going to see the glaciers disappear. Our water, fresh water source for many communities is going to die out. And of course, the oceans are warming and changing pH. I mean, the devastation that's going on is clear, and we are fiddling while the world is collapsing around us. So listening, I think that reconciliation is absolutely vital for us to deal with. Why? Because the Indigenous people cling to a value system very different from ours. And we need to find out what their value system is. You see, they believe that we live in a web of relationships with all other species that they call our relatives, and with air, water, soil, and sunlight. These are the fundamental underpinnings of the way we live. And we should be doing everything in whatever we do to live in balance with those factors. And that's what I believe reconciliation is. Now, to listen to John Rustad talk about, oh, yes, we need reconciliation, economic reconciliation. These are people who've watched billions of dollars of trees and minerals going out of their territory. They've been watching as they've been getting nothing. And now he's saying, oh, we're going to offer you economic reconciliation by allowing you to buy into the system that is the heart of the problem. Indigenous people only look at the Haida and their current settlement. My hat's off to Eby and his government for finally recognizing this is their territory. Why do the Haida want rights, sovereignty over their land again? Not just for the resources that have been taken off to get their share of that, but so that they can confer their reciprocal obligation to care for the land. And that's what we need. So the idea, economic reconciliation, is simply to say, we got to get those Indians to buy in and become like us. So we'll give them part of the economy. That's not what reconciliation is. And Sonia recognized that very, very well in her answer.
David,
It's a joke that a man who was kicked out of his party for being a climate denier is now leading the conservatives, and he wasn't even really drilled in on that. Why is this guy even a legitimate candidate for office when he is paying no attention to the gravity of the big issue that confronts us in British Columbia?
And that is your frustration, obviously, that not enough is being talked about right
And
now. Have you been
Stephen, it's you and me that are part of the problem, as we are in the media. And why is it that when we make reports that climate change isn't at the center of our conversations, whether you want to talk about homelessness or the economy or whatever?
But that's my
Climate
question.
change is
That's my question, David. I mean, it is fundamental and it is existential. But when people are dealing with, trying to pay their rent, when people are trying to deal with the high cost of living and groceries, and yes, even putting gas in the car, it seems that in tough economic times, it gets pushed off the agenda.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very true. So that you get Rustad, saying, "Oh, well, I know a case of this," and the minute you get into the anecdotal, you can find all kinds of people suffering from inequities, suffering from drugs and all. It's very moving, and we want to respond to that. But for heaven's sakes, what is a big picture? You know, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, said, if you're digging your own grave, the first thing you got to do is stop digging. You know, when you look at all the conversations with Danielle Smith or Stephen Harper when he was prime minister, they didn't deal with climate change as an existential threat. It was all, this is BS.
Right.
You're threatening our economy. The oil industry employs a lot of people. Yeah, this is all true. But let's deal with the fundamental problem, and then we can find an answer by working together. The issue of climate change and ecological degradation should not be a political issue. We've got to treat it like the emergency it is, and then all come together and work out the best way to handle that.
Right.
Let's stop digging.
All right, David, we are going to have to leave it there because we've got to make room for a hurricane about to flatten Tampa. So we appreciate your time as always and appreciate you listening. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You take care. That is David Suzuki.